the modern, conditioned, inauthentic woman that all of the social engineering and mind control techniques that we're talking about in this particular presentation are geared toward and are directed at. And one of them is to get them to really identify as part of their personality with the state, with government, with the type of authoritarian control that government represents. So I call this state unholy matrimony. The marriage that is taking place today is not largely between men and women. It is largely between women and the state. The state acts and is acting as the proxy husband in this psychological dynamic between themselves and women. So the conditioned woman is being engineered, socially engineered, to love the state for the very small perks that they are often given by it. On a subconscious level, they have bought into the state as the protective father figure, largely of themselves, because they believe that human society would simply degenerate into violence and chaos without the so-called protective father figure, psychological proxy of the state. This, of course, is actually an expression of what has been psychologically shown to be parental abandonment issues. The inauthentic and conditioned women who are brainwashed by this type of social engineering, again, identify the state as the fatherly proxy figure, often when there have been real parental abandonment issues in their relationship, specifically with their father, not necessarily just one parent, could be both parents. And parental abandonment issues, I want to reemphasize, do not have to be physical ones, meaning actual physical absence of presence of the parental being. They can be absences psychologically, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, in providing of needs for the child. If any of those elements and characteristics of the parental relationship, the parent-to-child relationship, are absent, that is a parental abandonment issue. So keep in mind, whenever I say parental abandonment issues, this does not have to mean that the parent is physically not present. They could be present. Both parents could be present, and the child still have parental abandonment issues because the parent is not providing what the child needs in a particular psychological, mental, spiritual, or emotional aspect. Emotional, spiritual, and sexual connections between men and women are being continuously eroded and eventually being worked toward eradication by the state. The state continually positions itself to be psychologically accepted as the quote provider, the quote unquote protector, and the quote unquote husband in this psychological proxy relationship between itself and women, what I call unholy matrimony. The vast majority of women in our society will not speak out against the state for these very reasons. And at any political rally, there are sometimes a decent split or breakdown, but I have particularly noticed that women are far more enraptured by the state and by politicians than even are men. It's probably about a 60-40 split. Sometimes it's more prevalent with a 70-30 split. But if you even go to political rallies, you will notice that it is always at least somewhat skewed toward the female population, the female percentage in attendance. And I would say that this is one of the actual psychological engineering, social engineering operations being waged upon women for that very reason. They are trying to reel specifically biological females into this identification with politics and the state, because they know that then that propagates directly into the familial connections, the familial dynamic, as I call it, and the family unit itself. And that's what they want. They want their hooks in that. to eventually weaken and break down the familial and family bond. And then they have everybody in the exact same trap, in the exact same prison of the mind, and eventually moving toward physical enslavement. And that's the technique that is being used against women to get them to identify with the state and why that is. Another aspect of deep connection to the state and having the state's hooks inside you is the institution called marriage. And a lot of people really don't understand that all marriage is a contract with the state. That's why women in today's society seek it so much. They want the family dynamic that they wish to enter into formalized and verified and bonded by the state. They don't want it to be a direct one-to-one relationship with the man. They wish for the violence of the state to be interjected into their personal relationship so that they can extract resources if that becomes necessary to them. And again, men go along with this because they want the perks and rewards that come with, as they perceive it, with the relationship with any particular woman that they seem to become enamored with at any time during their lives. And this institution is simply a contract with the state. It is not a two-way relationship. It becomes a three-way triangle of a relationship between the man, the woman, and the state. And people who think that marriage is anything other than that are delusional. You don't understand what the institution is. You have a completely erroneous perception of what it is. You want to believe that it's some sort of simply religious ceremony. It never has been that, and it never will be that. So the formal institution of marriage is often favored by the conditioned woman, since it brings a personal relationship into union with the violence of the state, as I just described. This union with the violence of the state has been traditionally used and steered to the benefit of the female, especially when a marriage ends in a divorce. And I'm just going to take a brief aside here at that sentence to just let you know that I talked about this past year in 2023. It ended up not happening later in the year because I was so busy with the Two Masks presentation and then other personal things in my life. But last year I kicked around the idea of doing a special podcast for the Band.video platform, InfoWars' video platform, which I have a channel on, and I want to do a show that is exclusive to that platform, and I'm going to start doing that. And I've decided it will be a monthly show during the time period that I run the How to Become the True Media seminar. Okay. Now I'm going to try to start it maybe later this year and maybe do 3 at the second 3 months of the How to Become the True Media seminar. Maybe we'll do October, November, December, if I could get this up off the ground. The show is going to take place in my own library room here at my home. It will be a very relaxed atmosphere. I might even have subdued lighting in there where we make it like a fireside chat. And it will be always in person with another individual. So I want to let people know I'm probably going to feature this year a couple of activists from this area and maybe someone who has specifically talked about this particular subject who I've spoken to and is a go for doing a podcast in that type of a setting. So I think I'm going to call it either What on Earth is Happening Conversations or Conversations with Mark Passio. I think that's probably the one I'll go with. It'll just be called Conversations with Mark Passio. And I wanted to take a very conversational vibe and just get the feel for what people do, what their efforts are, and whatever topic we want to discuss. So this particular topic, which is divorce and divorce courts, may be featured on one of those upcoming podcasts later this year. So the violence of the state, entering into union with that, has traditionally been seen by the conditioned female as a benefit that they receive, because if things don't go well in the relationship or the marriage, they can then use the state apparatus of violence to extract whatever resources they see fit and use the state's violence to do that, whereas they would not be able to do that on their own, because most women would not engage in that type of coercion and violence. Number one, more likely than not, because they simply would not have the physical prowess to do something like that. So this is why the state is loved by the modern conditioned female. It acts as their ability to perform violence. And again, people can disagree with that all they want. I've said it and put out the truth of the matter in a respectable way, where I know it to be true, and anybody who really truly understands the institution called marriage knows that to be true. Anybody who really understands what it is and isn't mind controlled by the types of fanciful and romantic delusions and euphemisms that are brought into play when it comes to marriage. It is a violent intercessor between the relationship between a man and a woman. That's all marriage is and ever has been. So for the people that want to fall for that, go ahead and see it as some romantic, lovely design of some kind, when it is in fact bringing the violence of the state into a relationship. And that is exactly what Satanism wants to do. It wants to have its hooks in everything. This is part of the whole satanic agenda. This is part of inversion of everything. This is part of the injection of violence into everything. So again, this desire to bring violence into the relationship by the state, desired by women, is especially true when a marriage ends in divorce. Over 80% of all divorces are initiated by women. Mostly because real world men don't live up to their programmed expectations. See, all of the psychological and social engineering is geared toward women to get them to see no man is good enough. Men are not good enough. Men are not worthy. And then when they do settle down into a relationship with a man, it's like everything has to be a state of perfection. Everything has to be exactly according to the expectations built up mentally, in the mind, in the psyche, largely because of the social conditioning that the conditioned female has received. And almost all real-world men will not live up to that built-up social programmed expectations. And so 8 out of 10 marriages, the woman initiates the divorce, the socially engineered, conditioned woman. Divorce courts rule drastically in favor of women over 95% of the time. Now, over 95% of the time. That means that at the time in 2016, when this presentation was conceived, made, and created, the actual percentage was between 95 and 96% of all divorce cases are ruled in favor of the woman. Between 95 and 96% of all divorce cases are ruled in favor of the woman, and 8 out of 10 women initiated those proceedings. in courts. I am going to tell you that that number is probably up from the year 2016. So I'm going to tell you it's probably now well over 80% of divorce cases are initiated by women, and it's probably up at least 1 to 2 percentage points of how many are ruled in favor of women. And once again, if you don't think this is the case, go and research it, go and study it. Try to take your head from out up your ass and try to really understand what's really going on here. And once again, this is not beating up on females. This is an expose and an analysis of social engineering that is geared toward females and why women have to get their head out of this satanic cage. This is a cage for the mind. All of these things are cages for the mind. I just want to say that if I'm a little bit moving a little more slowly today, if I'm a little bit subdued today, just want to let people know I attended a pretty intensive martial arts seminar yesterday, and because I just talked about this idea that these institutions are cages for the mind and these tactics are an actual prison for the mind, I just want to say that during the course of the seminar yesterday, it was a great seminar, by the way, there's aspects of it that I still, in general martial arts today, find troubling. That is that, number one, they will train anybody if they're offered money. That's it. If they're given the money to attend, they'll train anyone. There is no vetting done. There is no looking at moral character of individuals. They will train people in the state institutions, including the police and the military, etc. And to me, that's like going up to someone who you know has a very high potential of robbing you, has a high potential of committing violence onto you, who has in the past done theft and violence and could very easily move on to then do those very violent behaviors to you, and you keep buying weapons for them. I mean, literally, that to me, that's what that is. You saying, I'll give all of the secrets, all of the training, etc., to people who are potentially going to use that for completely immoral and violent purposes against their fellow men and women, you might as well go and heavily arm the nearest criminals to your home. My take on it. And the instructor put a bunch of, because it's a seminar that was about being able to flow and adapt, and that's what martial arts should be about. That's properly done by the instructor. The instructor put on a whiteboard a bunch of different martial arts styles. Muay Thai, Taekwondo, Karate, kickboxing, Jiu-Jitsu, on and on. And he surrounded them all with a box around them, a rectangular box around the name. And he said most people's mentality in martial arts is this. They go and they say, I'm going to learn everything there is to learn about Muay Thai. I'm going to learn everything there is to learn about Taekwondo. I'm going to learn everything there is to learn about Jiu-Jitsu. And then they stay there. They learn that style. They think that style is the complete totality of martial arts, or the most important aspect of martial arts. And they basically say to themselves in their own mind, that's all I need to know. That's all I need to learn. And he described that approach quite correctly as it's a box for your mind. It's a box for you to just have narrow-minded vision, close your mind off to everything else, and say, this is all there is. And that's why Bruce Lee did a phenomenal thing with Jeet Kune Do, the style that he created and taught, which wasn't a style. It was a styleless aspect of martial arts where you do not lock into a style. So it rightly shouldn't even be called a style. It's an adaptive, free-flowing, styleless approach. You can't even call it a form because it's formless. It's doing what you can do with your body. It's doing what works. It's adapting to an opponent, even if they're more skilled or larger or stronger or even faster. And it's being smart about how to go about an encounter with strategy. Now, I I have no problem with that as it's taught. But again, coming back to this,